An officer with a history of complaints against the Asheville Police Department says he was transferred for pointing out what he calls problems getting enough police on the streets.
Yeah, Lieutenant Mark Byrd has been with the Asheville Police for 15 years. He filed an employment complaint last year and a lawsuit against the department in federal court this winter.
News 13's investigative reporter Mike Mason is live at the Asheville Police Department. Mike, Lieutenant Byrd has now filed a grievance with the city.
Yeah, the lieutenant filed this grievance today saying the officer shortage has hurt the morale here at the APD, but he says more importantly, it's putting your safety at risk.
You've spoken with other officers, but they're petrified to come forward and speak out. And I understand why.
For the past year and a half, Police Lieutenant Mark Byrd has been in charge of patrols in downtown Asheville. He recently learned the number of violent crimes this past June were much higher than those reported in June of 2013.
It showed a 233% increase of Part 1 violent crime.
There were just 3 violent crimes in June of 2013 and 10 the same month this year. In July, Byrd was directed to write this memo explaining what triggered this spike in crime in downtown Asheville.
We have experienced some significant staffing shortages for over a year now.
In his memo, Byrd questioned the chief's recent policy of placing new trainees on the streets without the guidance of field training officers. Instead, trainees are assigned to officers without special training nor experience. Byrd wrote this could create a public safety issue and increase liability for the city.
Have we ever been at this level now? Not that I can recall. Is it a problem? Absolutely.
Byrd says when the chief received his memo, he transferred him out of patrol. Byrd felt this was a form of harassment, prompting him to file this grievance. 3 weeks after his transfer, Chief Anderson sent Byrd this memo criticizing the lieutenant's explanation for the spike in crime.
The problems we have not been fixed yet.
The chief found it misleading to blame the increased crime on an officer shortage, stating the internal staffing issues have been or are now being resolved.
Do we have adequate staffing on the street? Absolutely.
News 13 found the APD had 740 vacant officer shifts this year between May and September. 700 vacancies in 5 months is not typical.
No, we should have half that number at best.
City officials tell us that number is not unrealistic due to the increased activities downtown. Each vacant shift is filled whether officers volunteer for them or not. And the chief tells us officers are often eager to work overtime.
They volunteer first. Rarely do we need to mandate somebody to work a shift. That really doesn't happen.
But some cops tell us that's not the case.
Officers are frustrated. They're tired. We've worked them to a point where they're worn out.
This is also taking a hefty toll on taxpayers as well. The minutes from the September 22nd staff meeting show the APD has already spent 41% of its annual overtime for patrols, just 3 months into the fiscal year, which began July 1st.
41% in the first quarter. We've spent almost half of our overtime budget for the year already.
From April to August, officers worked nearly 19,000 overtime hours, costing more than $500,000.
At the end of the fiscal year, we may have to make some adjustments to compensate for that.
Some officers say that heavy workload is more than they can handle.
In a 2-week period, the officers are working essentially an extra week. So you're looking at, 110, 120 hours in a 2-week period.
The most important thing is to ensure that we're providing public safety in our city, and we do that.
One sergeant questions that, telling us some of his officers are so fatigued they're afraid of causing an accident. As a result, they often park their cruisers and avoid patrolling the streets altogether.
You don't have officers that are out there wanting to, engage in a lot of policing activities because of the concern or threat that they may get in trouble.
Now, News 13 has been investigating these staffing shortages for months and will continue to look into this. It is important to note that this past fiscal year, double the amount of officers have resigned compared to the highest number reported 3 years ago. If you have a story you'd like us to look into, you can always email us at news13investigates@WLOS.com. Reporting live at the Asheville Police Department, Mike Mason, News 13.